Góðan daginn og verið hjartanlega velkomin á þennan viðburð hér hjá Hinsegin dögum í Reykjavík. Samtal með Aron-Winston Le Fevre sem er mannréttindastjóri World Pride í Kaupmannahöfn í ár. Ég heiti Þorbjörg Þorvaldsdóttir og ég er formaður samtakanna 78 og við ætlum aðeins bara að spjalla saman. Samtalið fer fram á ensku, þar sem Aron talar því miður ekki íslensku. Og já, ég hlakka bara til að heyra hvað hann hefur að segja. Hi, Aaron. Nice to see you.
How are you doing?
Good, how are you?
Very good, very busy, but it's going well, I would say.
Yeah, exactly. So when is World Pride?
It starts on the 12th of August until the 22nd of August, so I would have to check. It's exactly in 9 days.
Okay, yeah. So at the peak of busyness right now, I can imagine.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. I was wondering if you could introduce yourself to the people listening in. Just
Absolutely.
your background. Who are you? What's your story?
Yes. No. Absolutely. So my name is Aron-Winston Le Fevre, and at this stage in life, I'm the Director of Human Rights for Copenhagen 2021 World Pride and Eurogames, located in Copenhagen. I am not Danish, I'm not Nordic either, I'm Dutch-Canadian, lived in different places all over the world, and I started this project in my current role 2 years ago, basically executing the human rights elements of Copenhagen 2021 for this mega project happening in the next weeks. So that's a little bit about me. I can only say that I'm very lucky to have this fantastic job, which I also think is an important job, looking at World Pride as a mega event for the LGBTI community.
Exactly. So, being the human rights director, what does it entail? What do you do?
Yes, and I have to start saying that this is also when I started, it's quite a new role in an organization like this. I don't think in previous World Prides there has been a real human rights director job or position. So I basically framed it in the way I thought was important from the beginning. Now, of course, as the Director of Human Rights, we are making sure that all these discussions, all these elements of inclusion are being taken into this mega event, making sure that it is not just another Pride where it's, especially in some of the global North countries, more of a party and a festivity, but a real human rights event where all these discussions on equality and inclusion are taking center stage, including activists from all over the world, but also senior level officials, including ministers. We have the honor of having the Icelandic president and the first lady here, but also parliamentarians from all over the world, decision makers, activists. And it exists out of different elements. Of course, we're working towards the different events taking place here in Copenhagen, but also engaging Danish and Swedish foreign missions around the world, making sure that the LGBTI agenda is really taken and carried forward, working together with about 20 executive partners, which are all LGBTI-focused organizations in different fields of inclusion. So it is basically a lot of different things existing out of activism, politics, and basically engaging the world, having this discussion on this important platform.
Amazing. Yeah, it really does sound like the best job ever.
It is. I would have to say that I'm extremely privileged. Again, I said this already, but extremely privileged doing this job. But of course, it is also a job that is not always easy. I think what I've seen and what I learned is that we are extremely lucky. There's still a lot of work to do in our own countries. We should never stop pushing our own governments. But looking at community members in other parts of the world, there is so much work to do. And a World Pride cannot call itself a World Pride if we don't put their concerns, their worries, and their situations and stories on our agenda. And I think the core element here is that we cannot speak about progress if we don't do it together.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I'm really happy that this is a focus point at World Pride. So when it comes to Pride celebrations, as you said, in the North, it's often viewed as a celebration more than a demonstration, right? But what significance do these celebrations, these marches, these events have for human rights? Maybe both like the advancement of human rights and also the maintenance of human rights in various countries.
No, absolutely. And this visibility that we as a community need to have is really important. As soon as we don't ask for this stage, as soon as we stop doing these marches, a lot of the acceptation that we gained might be lost because people don't see us, people don't understand the situation of the different parts of the community. And I think that is why Pride as an institution is such an important event that should take place in every part of the world in order to make sure that people understand us, that people see that we're there, in giving people an opportunity to engage with us. And I think that is the main significance for Pride. And that is, of course, again, closely connected to these human rights, because we are basically asking for one thing, and that is treated exactly the way as other people. We don't ask anything special. We ask to be accepted for who we are, who we love, how we feel. And it is very important that this visibility is there. Now, Pride brings together hundreds of millions of people around the world in different parts, that all comes back to this visibility and the fact that Pride is all over the world such an important event. Of course, taking into account that in many parts of the world, Pride is not possible. LGBTI people are being pushed into the shadows, that happening. You see that hate against the community is growing. You see that people don't have opportunities to be their best self. And I think that is one of these reasons why Pride should be there. But as Pride organizers, we should not forget that this human rights element should always be an important element in the festivities we organize, not to lose part of our community when it comes to understanding that everybody needs to be included.
Yeah, exactly. The visibility question is always a difficult one, right? Because, as you said, in some parts of the world, you simply cannot be visible, or it takes an immense amount of courage. We've been seeing some backlash against queer rights in certain parts of our continent, or in Europe, for the past few years. Do you have thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, the first thing I can say is that we're concerned, worried, and also angry when we look at the situation developing in Poland, in Hungary, but also Georgia, Croatia, Turkey. I mean, even in Spain, where community members or a community member has been killed recently. And I also see there again that we have to make a fist. We have to work together, not only as individual European Union countries or individual European countries, but together with our partner organizations, together with supporters, together with our allies, because the situation in Europe is worrying. And I also think that this whole COVID-19 pandemic has had an effect. Less visibility, of course, parts of our communities extra affected. I mentioned the intersex community, the transgender community because of underlying health risks, but also other issues they face more than anybody else. And I think it is now more important than ever to really come out, talk about our rights, enforce inclusion as such, also including not only activists, but also allies, legislators, governments, because I am afraid that if we do not make this fist right now all together, the situation we see now happening in Poland, in Hungary, but also Russia, Turkey, will only become worse. It is this spot of oil that is getting bigger and bigger, and that is something that we really have to act against in solidarity with other parts of our community, the entire acronym, but also very important, we should not exclude, we should include. Allies are important. Other parts of our community should be taken into account.
Why do you think, do you have any so this is something I've been thinking about a lot. Like, why is this happening? Why are we seeing a rollback, at least a stagnation in legal rights, and somewhere rollback of legal rights, and just, I don't know, societal attitudes in different places? What would be? Do you have any explanations or any thoughts on that?
There's of course different elements, different vantage points, and I say this with all respect, but there is other movements that see our movement grow and get stronger and give a pushback, an organized pushback, and that is, for instance, fed by religion, and then I don't mean mainstream religion, but fundamentalists within religion that are afraid of their rights being taken away, even though I don't think it has anything to do with their rights, because we accept everybody as they are. I should speak on behalf of myself, but I don't think we have anything against religion. Our problem is the fact that rights are being taken away from us, and the only thing we are asking is being able to exist in our own right within a society as it is. But it's also governments that use the LGBTI community as a scapegoat to win votes. I mean, it's always easy to take minorities in a way that you can divide and conquer, get many votes, as we see it happening in Poland, as we see it in Hungary. And that is also where these governments try to give an opportunity to, for instance, the majority religious people or like the people with a certain background in the country itself to really be against something in order to gain these votes. And I think that is really, really difficult, because that is where we are being put against other communities. Yeah. And that is where I feel that we have to work together more. We have to also extend an olive branch ourselves. We have to make sure that we keep talking with each other, but also with others, in order to understand each other's vantage points, and to see how we can, in this world as it is, coexist in a way that everybody has his, her, their space.
Yeah. So do you think that rallying allies within institutions that maybe discriminate or could be something that is, yeah?
I think it is really important to never cut contact, because there will always be community members within these communities. There will always be differences. But if we learned one thing, it is that putting ourselves against others is not something that will make us stronger. We have to make sure our own community is united. We have to make sure we don't repay those that are against us with the same courtesy. It is always better to reach out, keep on listening, keep on being in dialogue. And I know that is sometimes hard, and I know that that is not for everybody, and everybody within our community has his or her or their own role to play. But I do think it is really important to just keep on engaging, not leaving people out. And I think what is really important here to mention is we hear, including the Dutch Prime Minister, saying to Hungary, then leave. The problem there is, if we let leave Hungary, for instance, the European Union, we are also, with that action, missing out on an opportunity to help the community members that are actually living in Hungary. What are they going to do? And that is where I'm very careful with excluding, and I rather include, because there will always be community members excluded when we push people out or groups out.
You came to Iceland this spring, and yes. I remember we discussed this, the thing I'm about to ask you, and that is so the rise of this type of right-wing populism, people that are essentially against our rights, at least rights of part of the community, which in my mind just represents all of us. And we were discussing what is the appropriate reaction to these types of things? Do you call people out all the time? Do you pretend that you don't hear these types of things? How can we tackle these attacks on our community and our movement?
I think what is very important is never to react with hate and anger. I think it is really important to educate people. I think it is really important to be visible and explain the situation of our community. And I think it is, we should not react to every single attack that is be made on our community. I think we should focus on this element where we make sure that our community is visible and we explain people what our community is about, show people that we are everywhere. We are in schools, we are working in the Storsju visit, we are part of the Olympic Games. We are just as much a part of society as anybody else. The only difference is that we might live or we might feel that our body is not the body we would like to have. We might go home to a partner that is from the same sex. And I think it is really important to show that we are not the freaks that some people try to make us look like. And that is also what you, for instance, see in Hungary, with a law where we are being put in the same box as for instance, pedophiles. Yeah. It is really easy to do that and say, oh, those are all the freaks. And I lived in Kazakhstan for a while, where I worked at the Dutch embassy, which is already quite a number of years ago. And I remember the mother of a very good friend of mine, who is a fantastic and sweet woman, say, oh, this man on television had sex with a horse. You know, he's gay. That has all to do with the fact that there is no education. There's no understanding of who or what we are. And that is how countries like Hungary and Russia try to limit the knowledge of people in order to make sure that we cannot be visible and that we cannot explain people who we are.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. The thing about making sure that we can't get the message across as a form of oppression, and making sure that our movement doesn't get, because as soon as people realize that we are as human as everybody else, then it's very hard to support discrimination and prejudice, right?
And that is also where I think that it is really important that we keep on engaging with the media, but also keep on educating the media. And I keep on getting back to this education, using the right wording. How should things be explained and written down? We cannot expect everybody to understand our community entirely. And I have to be honest, I even learn every single day. I think that is also something that we as activists need to be open to learn, talk with parts of our community. But media in this sense are so extremely important. And in countries where the media is being clipped, where there's no opportunity for media to report freely on diversity, that is where you see that we're getting into trouble.
Yeah, exactly. What we have here, sometimes I'm a bit perplexed by the situation here in Iceland, because we are dealing with another problem entirely, which is that people are sort of feel like we already have all of the rights that we need, that we shouldn't be, like, why are we even doing Reykjavik Pride? Why are we even visible? Why would we have to educate people because everybody's on board, which is, of course, isn't the reality. But it has taken a lot of effort to try to get, for example, legislators and parliamentarians to take these matters seriously, that we need our legal rights secured, even though the kind of societal acceptance is there to an extent.
And I think that is also something where you see, for instance, that Western European countries that previously scored very well on this ILGA rainbow index are going lower and lower, which means that there is still a lot of issues, and there is parts of our community that are definitely not included, and there is still people that are getting beaten up on the street because they walk hand in hand. There is still a lot of discrimination against intersectional minorities, people of color that are part of our community, people in a wheelchair that are part of our community. I think we will never be able to stop asking and demanding for our rights. And if you, for instance, look at other movements like the women's movement, there's also still the need to keep on fighting, because there is no equality. We strive for equality. Some countries are doing a lot better than others, but as long as we cannot say that we are treated in exactly the same way as any other person that is not part of our community and fits within this very archaic box of straight, white, able-bodied, we cannot speak about equality. And when people tell me, because I get this question, oh, why do you still need Pride? Yeah. I get really angry. I get upset, and the only thing I need is explain them what is happening, not around the world, but only in Europe already. As I just said, a journalist being killed in Georgia when they are making a report of Pride, a Spanish community member being killed while being called faggot. I mean, I get goosebumps, because it really makes me very sad that people think we are there. And I have been to Iceland, and I do think Iceland is doing a great job, but there's still so much more work to do. And it's not only the work that you're doing in Iceland, it is also the work that has been done and has to be done around the world. Because again, we as a community cannot speak about equality if we're not all equal.
Yeah. And this key word, all, brings me to my kind of next question or point, because what we are seeing in, for example, in the UK and in the Nordic countries, in the US, in many places around the world where queer rights in general have been historically really good, we are seeing that people are trying to pry us apart. That people are trying to take, especially trans people, and try to deal with them separately from the rest of our long and beautiful acronym. Do you have so this is something that's really worrying to me, and I can imagine it's to you as well. Do you have any thoughts on this?
It is really worrying, because our acronym exists out of minorities. If we divide, we will not conquer. We need to stand together. We need to work together. For that, we need to understand each other, talk to each other. Yes, we are a long acronym. A lot of people make jokes about that. I understand that sometimes it's funny. All these letters, people don't even know. We all know how reporters or legislators or civil servants sometimes try to pronounce the acronym and getting totally lost in it. But in the end, every single letter of the acronym stands for a group of people that is not included. And the first thing that we have to do is understand that there is many different people in our community, educate ourselves, as we want other people to be educated about our problems and about our situation. And I think that is the division within our own community is an issue. I mean, I mentioned the TERFs here. I mean, they might be known to many that are trying to exclude trans people. In my opinion, it doesn't work that way. That is not how we work here in Copenhagen. During Copenhagen 2021, of course, had a slogan, "You are included," means everybody is included. Also being honest that it will never be possible to make every single person happy. But we always have to strive to be better and to include more people and listen to those that do not agree, because there will always be people that do not agree. And I think we have to give voices to those that do not agree. But what I do not agree on is people that exclude other parts of our community, because that is fundamentally against everything that I and we here believe in when it comes to inclusion. So I think it is extremely important to support, in this sense, trans people, but also I think the intersex community often feels misunderstood or completely neglected. The asexual community, same story there. How can we include them? That is always the question you have to ask yourself.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, and realizing the privilege that we often have within our own community. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think you and I might, when you compare to a lot of other people, be very lucky. We come from countries with a good passport. We both have jobs. So we are very privileged, and that is also one of these elements that sometimes are forgotten also during Pride. I mean, yes, Pride, there is a lot of fun and there's a lot of happiness, but the ones that can actually come to Copenhagen 2021 are those that are privileged enough to be able to travel. And even when we give them a scholarship, some of them don't get a visa, and those are the ones that we should have had here, because those are the ones that are most likely in the most difficult situation.
Yeah.
And that is sometimes also where we criticize our own government. I mean, we all know that Denmark is not the most welcoming country for foreigners. I mean, we have to do the best we can to make sure to show this diversity and get as many people as possible with a unique voice to come here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it also feels, sometimes it feels weird, or it feels bad knowing that, for example, here in Iceland, that we live in relative security, we live, we have the opportunity to lead good lives, and then people come here and seek asylum and are in some cases being sent back. Do you address these topics at World Pride?
Yes. So one of the main topics within Copenhagen 2021 is the rights of LGBTI refugees, and that will be discussed throughout the entire program in the conference, with a plenary on the opening day on Tuesday, with a summit in Malmö with our colleagues in Sweden on Friday, giving voices to different LGBTI refugee community members all throughout the week, because we live in a world where there is a lot of immigration, migration, where we see a lot of refugees asking for asylum in safe countries. And I can tell you, most of these refugees don't take their journey leaving everything behind because they had a good life. And I think that is sometimes something that we don't understand. Many of these people fled from war, from prosecution. If we look at our own community, often from death. If you look at countries like Iran, if you look at countries like Nigeria. So we need to focus on this. It is a contemporary issue. The refugee situation is a situation that should be discussed. And I think that is also where Scandinavia has a lot, or the Nordics, I should say, has a lot to learn. Every country does it very differently. I think for those that are coming to Copenhagen and Malmö, you will see the difference between Malmö and Copenhagen in the diversity of the people. But it is something that we cannot omit in this day and age. Refugees are an important part of our society and are a contemporary situation that we have to assess and deal with to the best of our capacities.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think in Denmark we have quite some talking to do.
Yeps.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Sorry, I got a little sidetracked there, but yeah, this is really, really important. I think that we make sure, or like here in Iceland, we don't really have we don't have legislation that protects LGBTIQ people from, especially when they seek asylum, for example. So this is something we need to work on here. And at the same time, we see things happening like the new bill that was just introduced in Ghana, that I presume you've heard about. That is
absolutely.
one of the most draconian pieces of legislation there is, where even being an ally to LGBTIQ plus people is considered a crime.
And you see, this is where I also think our countries have an important role to play. Our development aid and our support internationally is something that is of importance, and our countries need to keep fighting in these international organizations like the United Nations, structures like the Council of Europe, and in our case then also the European Union, to make sure that when we provide for aid, LGBTI people are always included. We have to make sure that we are being outspoken when it comes to the rights of LGBTI people, also in the Global South, without dictating, because I know how thin the ice is when it comes to colonialism and neocolonialism, but we cannot look away from the situation of the LGBTI community when we are talking with counterparts in other parts of the world where these rights are as draconic, as you say, in Ghana. And also, just to couple that back to what we're doing here in Copenhagen 2021, there will be activists coming from Africa. Many of them, unfortunately, can't make it due to the pandemic, but will be included when it comes to the digital opportunities. But also, we have different legislators present and engaged, amongst which legislators from Belize, from Kenya, even from Uganda, Jamaica, because we have to make sure that they are supported in the work they're doing, that they feel empowered, and that this voice is out there. But again, our countries really have a big role to play when it comes to showing the importance of inclusion, not only by discussing this when it comes to development aid, but also showing the best practices. I mean, it does work for the general country when it comes to culture, social elements, and economics to include everybody. We see that here in Denmark, you see that there in Iceland, and that is also something, these Nordic values that are sometimes being talked about. Sometimes I think they are still very different between the different countries, but there is a certain essence of speaking about inclusion.
Yeah.
And I think that is where, in a positive way, our countries can play a big role, especially working together.
Yeah. So do you think it's of significance that for example, so let's imagine a world where all of the European countries are at the top of the ILGA Europe map, and everybody has their legislation in place. They're all of the now my English is failing. So the efforts to have all of these kind of programs to diminish hate and prejudice and all of that. So do you think that would have an impact? Do you think that would on other countries, or is it just going to be like, oh no, the evil West kind of narrative?
I mean, the evil West is a construct that has been made up in order to push certain countries away in a different direction when it comes to their political situation, mainly. What do we see in these countries where they talk about the evil West? Is there a democracy? Is there freedom of press? Those are all lacking. And in order to make sure that they don't lose out on their opportunity to create their country like is happening in Russia, you need to have an enemy. But I do believe that in many countries, seeing what diversity actually brings to the table and how countries develop must be an important reason to move a different direction. And let's just take Belarus as an example here, just on a wider scale. There's a lot happening there right now. There has been a lot of protests. So people are not in favor of what is happening there, but with certain leaders in place and with the media in your hand and with ways that they are building their countries, it is really easy to project everything that is bad about the West and build their own society in which there need to be scapegoats in order to stand. Because as soon as they fall away, their systems are falling away. I mean, there's so much research done on these kind of things, but in the end, I believe that what many countries in the West are doing is the right direction. Not saying, again, that we are perfect, because we are not. We should never say that we are perfect, because then we lose out on an opportunity to keep on improving. But looking at a lot of other countries in the world, we do have a standard in which it is easier for LGBTI community members to live, to grow up, to grow old than in certain other countries in the world. Do I think that the situation will change very quickly? I don't think so. I think we really need to work hard, and I think it will take generations for us to move forward. But if you look at, for instance, people of color, of women, still a lot of issues, but very slowly, step by step, sometimes a couple of steps back. If you get a president like, for instance, Donald Trump, we are moving in a certain direction. And it can never go quick enough, but that is just not the reality.
So you don't believe we're on a backwards trajectory right now?
I do think we're going a couple of steps back right now, yes. And that is why I'm also saying, we're in this situation where we see countries fighting inclusion and progress as we see it. And that is where we now have to make this fist work together and push forward. And I also, and I said this before, thinking that we are there is, I think, the most dangerous notion we can have, because when we come to a standstill, we're going to go backwards.
Yep. So we need to keep looking at the horizon altogether.
Absolutely. And the horizon will never be, the horizon will always be in front of us.
Yeah.
Always, yes, it's like the spot of gold at the end of the rainbow. It is hard to find, and I think we will never get there, but we have to keep on chasing this full equality.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Eru einhverjir hér með spurningar? So I'm asking people if they have questions fyrir Aron. Einhver hér? We've talked about everything apparently.
Well, I hope to see many of the people there in the room and many of our Icelandic compatriots here in Copenhagen to bring the Icelandic story, but also just to support us in this fight for equality, not only for our region in the world, but for all those that are by far not there and that deserve so much more than they get now.
Yeah, I think at least some of us that are here are coming to Copenhagen. So I can't wait to hopefully meet you there.
I will be here.
Yay. All right. Thank you so much, and I'm gonna say goodbye in Icelandic, and then we'll be out. Yeah. Þakka ykkur kærlega fyrir að fylgjast með. Takk kærlega fyrir komuna, þið sem eruð hérna í raunheimum, og ég vona bara að þetta samtal og þessi skilaboð frá Aroni muni nýtast okkur öllum til frambúðar. Takk fyrir kærlega. Yes.